Hi guys, welcome to another Me, Myself and Mine podcast with myself, Dominic Goresbury and Dan Edwards. And obviously in this tough time, the isolation that we're all in, we are providing free platforms for you guys to listen in on and hopefully promote and help you with your mental health and well-being. And today I'd like you to we're going to introduce you to Roël McMahon, who is a certified health coach, and she has got a degree in life science. She also is a certified primal health coach and a trained nutritional therapist. So I'd like to welcome our special guest today, who will be talking about how the body and the mind are affected through our eating behaviours and how our behaviour actually affects our eating, especially in this current stressful situation. So here we go, just introducing Roël.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. Very exciting.
No, it's our pleasure. Absolutely. I can't wait to talk about, some of the things that we're going to discuss in today's podcast around eating and behaviour, and things from our past and how it pollutes our present. I think it's going to be a very interesting one. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners at home? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what your qualifications are, what it is that you do.
Sure. My name is Roël McMahon. Bit of a weird name. I'm Dutch, but even in Holland, I think that's a weird name. I am a health coach and a nutritional therapist, also a fitness instructor, and recently also qualified as an aromatherapist because part of my health coaching work, essential oils are a big passion in my life. So health coaching, very interested in what we can do ourselves to be as healthy as we can be and as happy as we can be. And that's why I changed my career a couple of years ago. Studied life science. I did a BSc in life science, and was blown away by what I've learned there, and how amazing our bodies and minds are, and how it all works and how it all links together. Then obviously wanted to do something with that, and trained as a health coach. I'm qualified as a primal health coach, and that's not something that a lot of people have heard about, but if I say then more people will have heard about it. Basically, it is just approaching health on the basis that we are a species with specific requirements for how we move, how we eat, how we sleep, how we manage our stress. And this is, our biological makeup hasn't really changed over the last 200,000 years since we evolved as sapiens, but our lives have changed. And sometimes because of how our culture and how our ability to produce stuff that's not always good for us, how that's all happened, we sort of have lost sight a little bit about what as a species we're supposed to do to stay well. Because if you go to the zoo and you see somebody chucking jaffa cakes in an enclosure of an exotic animal, you probably have a fit, and you want to slap them and go, what are you doing? Well, we think feeding that to ourselves or our children. And even though that's not killing you on the spot, it does have an effect on how your body works and how your mind works. And I think understanding that is such a great factor in, reaching out for things to do and things to eat that are just much healthier. So that really attracts me to the health coaching, and I just feel really passionate about helping people to see how that makes a difference and how everything is so interlinked. And that's why I'm so excited to be on a podcast with you guys, because it's not just diet, it's not just exercise, it's not just mindfulness or mental health, or everything's interlinked. And the more you study, the more you find that it's all interlinked, and you can't just tackle your diet, and you can't just tackle your mental health. It is, it all goes together. And often I refer because I can't be an expert in everything. So my expertise would be the diet and the fitness, and then on the side I recognise the massive importance of self-care in the mental health department. But
Yeah.
I can't be, you know, expert in everything, and I refer to hypnotherapists and Reikis to any other stuff that might help with things like that. And I think that's why I think it's important to not just look, and that's what I found. That's why I didn't want to study dietetics, because I think a lot of the science that they teach is debunked by now. But also because to me that's just part of this approach that you find with governments mainly, but other sort of official organizations and some charities, is very much based on it's knowledge driven. So just look at, you know, what this is what you need to eat, this is what you need to do, even if you do look like things like exercise and diet and mental health, and then just give you a list of things that you need to do. But it's not that simple. You tell people what to do and then think that they are equipped to do it. And, you know, I think that's where health coaching and, you know, all other forms of therapy and alternative care come into. So yeah, super. Actually, so I did all my fitness instruction. I've done diabetes management, obesity management for children and adults, because unfortunately it is a big issue in children now as well. Then the primal health coaching and the nutrition diploma as well. So
yeah, I liked what you said there about how it's, you know, everything's interlinked. It isn't just, you know, sorting one thing and then expecting everything else to, you know, correct itself. You've got to almost look at your life, look at where you've been, and address certain, you know, aspects of your life, and then cultivate a healthy plan that involves little bits of everything. You know, it's not just one size fits.
Now is actually, although, you know, nobody can say this is a great time. Obviously, we're in a crisis and people are dying and very ill, and that's terrible. But this is a great time for introspection, reflection, assessing what physical state did you go into this pandemic. You know, was your body in an optimal state to cope with something like this? And be honest. And I think a lot of us will have to say no, you know, and even I, as a health coach, you know, I've looked at some of my habits that still could do with some tweaking as well. And you've got to be honest with yourself. What state were you in mentally? Were you mentally in the best position you could be to cope with this? And even mentally, well, you know, what were you doing to, you know, to make sure that you can cope with setbacks like this? Or, you know, should you change what you're doing or how you're doing it? And a lot of companies have been doing that, you know, having a big massive. So, you know, apart from it being stressful and sad and upsetting and worrying, I see it as an enormous possibility and exciting chance to evolve yourself.
I think I agree with you both there, guys. I think it's a huge, at the moment, I know it's a crisis, as you said, and quite frightening for a lot of us. It's a huge opportunity, isn't it, to reflect. And as Roel's saying, and you're saying, Dan, and we agree with me, myself and mine, the practice of it's being holistic, it's the whole person, isn't it? And that's part of the problem, isn't it? When we fracture ourselves off in different aspects of our lives and we act negatively, it's going to have a negative impact on the next body part or the next organ or whatever that may be, or facet of your life. So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's not one size fits all. And as you said, Roël, it's really about having experts for the whole body. You know, it's like, you know.
Yeah, that's another thing that always sort of baffles me a little bit. I don't know what you're like with boilers, but if my boiler is broken, I'm going to call a boiler expert to come and fix it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had some experience with fixing it. You might have a stab at it yourself, but yeah, I did that. It's disastrous. But if there's something wrong with your mental health, or issues around, other health issues, I think people sort of that they can fix that themselves, that they can, work out how to do that. But it's probably way more complicated than a boiler. Why would you not seek help for that?
I sorry, Dan, go on.
No, what was you going to say?
I was just going to say I agree with you completely, Roël, because obviously our side of the business is mental health and well-being, and I do a lot of private practice with clients anyway. And what we're seeing is there is a lot of mythology out there about mental health, and it's always been, no disrespect to anybody, doctors are fantastic, but it's always been a short-term solution of prescribing pills. I'm sure you'd agree, with antidepressants for a short period of time. But unfortunately, there's no sort of aftercare or exit once people are on those sort of pills. So as you said, it needs to be the whole person that's treated to get to the root of the problem, I think.
I think one thing I'm going to come at it two ways. I think we're in probably the best time ever that, people are able to address their own mental health. They're able to look at their life, look at where they are, where they want to be, what's actually happened. It's not as much of a taboo subject, but
it is evolving.
And what a time to be in a place where you can seek help, and it's not taboo to talk about. You're not weird for talking about it or wanting to improve. But when people go to the doctors, or not slating the doctors or anything, but there needs to be that full body approach. What's your lifestyle like? What happened here? What happened there? What's currently going on? We need to look at all aspects before we make any sort of judgment, diagnosis. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's right. Carry on. Sorry.
When you go to a GP, unfortunately, A, they are not trained to do that, and B, they're not, they don't have the time to do that. So there's a resource not there. So, I feel, it might be a little bit controversial, but unless you feel like you need urgent medical attention, a GP for me is not the first port of call.
And I think I do agree to a point, well, on that, but it's all we've ever known, isn't it? Especially in the UK. I don't know what it's like, from the world.
You should be able to go to one place where then from and say, okay, I think you need this, that, and maybe that. That the options would be there. But I feel like them, as good as a job they're doing, the best they can, they're on the resource, just not that sort of approach.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and I think maybe this, as we said, the current situation is a huge opportunity for all health professionals now, and the governing bodies, and plus the government, to actually, get people more interlinked. And again, we're coming back to communication, like you say. The general practitioner, no disrespect, there is a clue in the title, general practitioner, and you need experts for different body parts, including the mind, which is what you're illustrating.
They should, work together with them, and it is sort of happening here and there, and hope more and more. But I think it would be great if that became mainstream.
Yeah, definitely. But
definitely,
this podcast is particularly going to be focusing on eating behaviour, eating habits, and food and our mental health, which is something that you're very familiar with. I believe that it's not something that's spoken about enough. And, what causes unhealthy eating habits? It's not just because we're unmotivated or lazy. What are those sort of reasons behind it? If you could go into that a little bit.
Sure. I think it's really important to acknowledge that issues with eating habits, if have undesirable eating habits, overweight, that hardly ever are associated with people being lazy, or it's being associated, but it's hardly ever the link that they are lazy or weak. There are a lot of things at play, a lot of factors that affect how you look after yourself and what you eat, and you can sort of categorize them a little bit, and definitely emotional issues and mental health issues play a massive part in that. Mm-hmm. But it works, to make it even more complicated, it works both ways. So your eating habits will affect your mental health, and your mental health can affect your eating habits. So that makes it extra tricky. I think if you, a lot of people have issues that they're sort of aware of, but they could be quite embedded. And and I think Dom, you probably see loads of that in your practice.
Yeah.
It could, embedded negative self-beliefs. There could be experiences, and even very singular events. Literally, one thing that one person said when you were 8 years old can totally affect your eating habits when you're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Think many people have that.
Carry on, Roël, sorry.
Yeah, so I just thought you have, like I said, that's sort of definitely more your area of expertise. But when I all I do is to sort of try and spot that, acknowledge that, and then obviously they need help with that. That I can't. And that is,
So on that note, I agree with you there. A lot of it is from our past, past childhood experiences, or can be, and that is carried through us into adulthood, as you're stating about, what type of foods we're eating, frequency, for how much, for how long, and how that actually affects us on a day-to-day basis. And that's quite important, that it can really affect our mental health and well-being in both positive ways, but also we're looking at obviously the negative ways to help support people with that and change that root cause of the problem, as you say.
But I think what's also important is to make people see that it can be reversed. This can, that out. And once you have, then you're in a much better place. You still have to do the work. You're still not going to be a Kit Kats all day. But, you have hardly any chance. And so that's my whole point. You're up against things that are so strong that no amount of willpower can get you to solve these issues. So that's why it's really important. So there can be also positive associations. Like we often associate cake with celebration, and so what comes with that is that when people eat cake, not only do they get like all the rush from the sugar and the dopamine produced and creating feelings of pleasure, so there's that physical side of it, but subconsciously there's also these associations that you have with eating cake when we're happy, when we're celebrating something, or when we're rewarded, or that's or I don't know, a lot of people reward their children with sweets, and so you learn to associate sweet food and junk food with pleasure and reward and fun.
So then would you say that then, when people aren't feeling good in themselves, they use food to then improve their mood because it's a subconscious program?
Absolutely. And you do get rewarded. So that's the nasty thing about it. It does make it better. But again, if you teach people that you can create these feelings with other things as well, and try to take these associations away from the food and see how they can link them to other things that are not food related, then that could be really helpful. And again, only thing that's going to sort their lives out, but all these things, this knowledge about how that works and why you're doing it, will just make it much more likely that you're going to be successful. So I haven't even sort of touched upon big well, there's actually one other one that is quite important as well, is your environment and the people that you surround yourself with. And that cannot be underestimated. If you're in an obesogenic environment where there's lots of bad food, you have no idea how to cook a meal from scratch, and your friends and family are not supportive of any sort of efforts towards healthy living, then again, with all the willpower in the world, I challenge you, you'd be up against it.
Yeah.
and
That's totally valid, because all of us have learned eating habits, obviously, from childhood, and a lot of it is reinforced, as you just quite rightly said, in the environment, and that can be part of the problem. If you want to become healthy, and other members of the family, deliberately or non-deliberately, are eating unhealthy foods each week, you've learned to grow up and associate, that's normal, should we say, in your family. Then unfortunately that impacts on us negatively later on in life. And that was leading into the next question, really, looking at behaviours, Roël, and how environment is vitally important to us. And one of the things we were looking at as well is eating disorders. How do you feel about eating disorders that have stemmed from childhood, and how prevalent do you think it is for both males and females?
Unfortunately, it is very, very prevalent, and especially amongst teenagers now, it is a big problem, a big issue, and it is related to the fact that food is used as a tool to deal with something where food is not the right tool to and but it's an accessible tool, because anybody, and especially teenagers, or how would they know how to tackle feelings that they have? They're under pressure, they're stressed, they have anxiety, and they feel powerless. And if they look around and see what tools they have to deal with that, then, well, they can drink, they can smoke, they can take drugs, they can use food to get power and control.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, again, is all about recognizing that, acknowledging that, and then empowering people with the right tools to address these issues.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you're saying there, Roël, that it's once we find out the reasons why, then we can work on, how we can change within that process, or those individuals. And I find myself that we found with maybe group settings or even individuals, that it is about this disassociation, isn't it? And realistically, it's about the feelings within ourselves that we want to control. And some people are reaching for extra donuts or even extra portions of healthy food to become certain. And I think that's what we all need as humans, isn't it, Roël? To become certain about, where we're going in life, our progression, as it were. And it's in the Western world, unfortunately or fortunately, it's too readily available. Whether it's the junk food or the healthy food, it's there to, it's there to help us escape. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yes. And I think it's also, like I said, those are the easy options to deal with. It's not, it's not easy to say, okay, I'm going to do a lot of exercise now because I know that that's going to create those, endorphins and all the other hormones that make me feel better and will help with it. Because the last thing you want to do when you're depressed is go out for a jog. I mean, I hardly want to go out for running when I'm happy. So this is really difficult. But I think so what I'm trying to say is, with all these things, you still have to do certain things to get into that healthy place. But once you know how that works, and once you start to see it happening as well, then that's going to give you so much drive and motivation, and then you get through it. But you need I think that's where you need a little bit of help to get that information, to know exactly what's going on in your body, in your mind, why you're doing what you're doing. You're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not weak. You've got hormones working against you. It's biochemistry you're up against. This is how it works. And just that understanding in itself, I think, is already very helpful in motivation.
Yeah, and that leads us into, the next question, when we was talking about how do we start changing these behavioural patterns with food. And like you were saying then, is that first step becoming aware, noticing certain things aren't right or certain things are right. And then once you notice and you've got the information backing you, that gives you that power to drive forwards.
Yes. And I think also So there's these theories about breaking habits, and a very old one, I think it's from the 60s, is that it takes 21 days to break a habit.
Yeah.
I think there was a book in the 60s called Cybernetics, and
Probably.
yeah, Maxwell Maltz wrote that, and it was about although it wasn't really related to food, I think it related to plastic surgery, to people who had their faces completely changed and how long it takes to adjust to a new situation. And so he worked out 21 days. Now, since that has been adjusted, in sort of more research has been done since the 1960s on that, of course. And it turns out that 66 days is more of a real average of time.
It's definitely tripled, yes.
Yes, and the range is wide as well. So some people take 18 days, and some people, I think it was between 18 and 246 days. It can take, it can take longer, it can take shorter. But
yeah,
what's relevant here is that if you know that there is a period of time, and whether that's 21 days or 66 days, that if you can just somehow, and not just somehow, but with help, with tips, with hints, with you know, strategies that you can use, but that you know that there's an end to that, that you know that either after 21 days or 66 days or 100 days, you'll come out of it the other end, and you'll find. I think that in itself already will help people to go through it and then get to the result, and then feel that it gets easier, and break those habits. Now, what's really important as well with trying to change habits is it is not easy to just stop doing something and replacing it with something else. So I would always suggest that if you're trying to break a habit, that you replace it, obviously, with a good one. So you're not going to like junk food into taking cocaine. But, so you are going to find, and again, with help, you can find things that you do instead of what you would do that will give as much or even more pleasure. And see that, then it becomes so much easier. Lastly, you need that environment, because it's really difficult. So behavioral science says to change your behavior, you need you need to be clear about how you can do it. So you need the knowledge. That's important. You need to understand why it's important to change the habit. You have to have all the skills and tools to change the habit. And you have to have your social and physical environment set up in a way that you are able to do that. You must have the time, and some people need a bit of help in terms of accountability, cues, and prompts. And so again, where health coaches play a massive role to get you through that.
So if somebody did want to change, and like you said, the environment plays a massive part. If they do come from an obese family, or you work in an environment such as the office, and cake, treats and everything like that is in abundance, how do they go? They can't just up and leave their job. You can't leave your family just because you want to lose weight. How would you then approach that situation?
Yeah, I think you'd have to get some buy-in from your direct environment, and maybe make some tough choices as well. And I think I'm not saying abandon your family, but I think definitely in terms of friendships, you have some room to demand that they either get on board with it, and if they don't, then you just have to back off a little bit. I think for your own sake. And with family, there you just really have to sit down and have a chat about how important this is for you. And even if you get them on board for a short period of time, which might be easier for them, or even just a few, just even if they don't start adopting the healthy habits themselves, maybe ask to comment on you doing it, or not make you feel, so it's just creating awareness, and in the office, I think as well. I think a lot of people feel the same. Like, I think if you interview people in an office, nobody wants to eat the cake, but they all do because it's there, you know. And I'm sure, you know, without banning the cake from the office, I'm sure think of a way that that cake is not so easily available to everyone. It's not just standing there with the, you know,
Do you
with
think,
the plate and the, you know.
think maybe if they had that discussion in the workplace or even with the family, you know, you say not everybody wants to eat the cake, having that real discussion with people and speak with them and say, do you actually enjoy this food, or does it make you feel guilty afterwards? You know, why are we actually eating this? Do you
Yeah,
think
get
it's have
on board. They want to join in. If you do it together with other people, you're more likely to succeed as well. You know, there might be a few others who feel the same, and then you can
Yeah.
support it as well.
I think, as you're both saying there, I mean, we found this within the workshops that obviously it's almost an artificial environment, but when we go in, we actually broach those conversations, so it's far easier for them to speak up. And some of it is false communication, isn't it? Giving out the cake just to appease people and feel more agreeable. And I think, you know, as Dan's saying, highlighting, you both suggesting that an honest communication is far better to actually break those habits. But excuse me, some of this links into the stage of change behaviour, the model, where people have got to understand or be made aware of that they are going to relapse. I think that's part of the problem in Western society, the word failure.
Yeah.
You know, somebody fails, that's it. They're going to stop that healthy eating because they've ate that piece of cake. They feel so bad about themselves. So they do need that support, don't they? You know?
Yeah. But you know, with regards to failure, you only have to look at the most successful people in the world, and any well-known stories about famous artists and writers and, you know, and business people who failed hundreds and hundreds of times before they were successful. And every failure is one step closer to success. And you're very unlikely to, you know, be successful straight away without failing. And you should just see that as, you know, an experience that will make you stronger to succeed.
Brilliant.
And also, when you fall, and that's another thing that I forgot. Is that the expression, falling off the bandwagon? Yeah, it is, isn't it? When you,
Falling off, falling off the wagon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, not the bandwagon. You jump on the bandwagon.
Jump on the bandwagon.
Right. You know, falling off the wagon, eating that piece of cake, and then feel rubbish, feel like they failed, like they can't do it, and they think, well, I might as well now eat the crisps as well and open a bottle of wine, and it's Friday, now I'm going to wait till Monday. You know, you're only off the wagon for as long as you decide to be off the wagon. You can be, within the next minute, you can be back on it.
And go on, Dan.
I just feel, and I know that I've done that myself a lot. You all of a sudden have one biscuit, and then you think, oh, well, I've had one biscuit now, I might as well have the pack.
But there's no science backing that up, because the pack is still way worse than the one biscuit.
I know, but it is just that mindset of once you think you've failed, you're like, oh, well, I'll start again tomorrow, or I'll start again after the weekend. And it's, why have we got those natural inclinations to do that?
Yeah, again, a lot of that comes back from, you know, childhood, and some people are just more prone to feel like that. You know, I was just watching programs where these celebrities go into SAS training, you know, special forces training, and as Victoria Pendleton, and she won numerous medals with cycling, and she still was a failure, and she won like 2 gold and 2 silvers, or 2 gold and a silver, and she was upset because she didn't get 3 golds, which she wanted to do. That is deep-rooted feelings that you need to address with, you know, something like therapy or other counselling, or because that is going to seriously affect your life and the choices that you make.
I think, as you're saying there, that it's like a vicious cycle, isn't it? You know, and that was leading on to the next question, as it were. You know, do the mental health issues affect the eating, or does the eating affect the mental health issues. That's the cycle of behaviour, isn't it? And that's almost linked into everybody's situation at the moment, in particular the lockdown. I'm concerned, and I'm sure me and Dan had this discussion about people's behaviours before lockdown. Is it going to exacerbate those behaviours or decrease them, reaching for alcohol or reaching for those sugary foods or junk foods? What do you think, Roël, at this moment?
I think it's going to be both. I think this pandemic will show a lot of people what they're made of, and some people will come out evolved, stronger, better, and some people will crumble and deteriorate. And what that depends on is it depends on to what extent you're able. So in the pandemic, I think I saw a really nice Instagram. They're like 3 levels, 3 stages, and the first one is survival. When it first happened, most people just frightened, stressed. They're on social media the whole time, looking at all the stories. They're unproductive, they're lethargic, worried about everything, and just a bit paralyzed in a way. And if they can move on from that, and that depends a little bit on the people you hang out with, past life experience, you already had mental issues, whether you're depression or physical issues, hormonal imbalances, that all determines your resilience. And if you can move on from that, that'll be the second stage, is acceptance, where you're not quite so extremely worried and stressed the whole time. You're limited exposure a little bit. I think, Dom, you're doing that. You're not watching the news now, are you?
No, I haven't had a television set for 2 years, so quite proud of that.
Limiting that exposure to that negativity. You're getting more pleasure in little things again. In that first stage, you're like really stressed and you're not even noticing what you're eating or what you're doing. But when you're at the stage, you're going to savor small experiences again. You're going to think about what new routine you can have. Maybe you spend that survival period eating crap and drinking lots of alcohol and watching day, and now you're thinking, okay, right, let's get a grip. I'm going to get dressed in the morning. I'm going to have a routine. And you're going to put value on the time outdoors, which you've been taking for granted. You're going to find out new ways to connect with people. So that's the acceptance. But if you can come out of that, then you get into the growth stage. And this is, and again, and I know, I'm sort of really banging on about it, but this is really important. If you're that kind of person who got stuck in that survival mode, and who's that person who's come out worse, and you hear that there can be these 3 stages, and you understand it, again, it comes back to having the knowledge about what's going on in your body. It can make you think, oh yeah, actually, right, let's do a bit of less watching of the news and negativity. Let's look at, enjoy sitting on my balcony in the sunshine, reading a book. And then suddenly, it becomes a self-perpetuating good thing where they realize that they can come out of it. And so, I think it's just having that input from somewhere.
And it's needing that support, as you're saying, and hopefully the self-esteem with some may have gone into this situation with low self-esteem, and hopefully they've grown to appreciate the moments. And I'll put my hand up. I know with food, I eat it too quickly. And again, you're not, as I'm sure you'll explain to us, that you don't take the nutrients on board. It doesn't help you at all. And actually you'll put more weight on through eating it too quickly. And maybe this experience is slowing everything down. And as you said, becoming more absorbed and understanding your body, actually being in the moment rather than just sort of, being on that fast bullet train, like a Japanese train rushing by, and you don't even, take the moment to take in the fresh air and become aware of your surroundings. You become more conscious, hopefully. Would you agree, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm a positive person, but I also, around Easter time, I had a little bit of a dip where I thought, oh my God, the world's never going to be the same again. And normal, you know, it is a stressful situation, it's a big crisis, and we'll have to process it. But at the end of the day, you do want to come out, you know, positively, and you don't want to, you know, there's not much point in not learning from this whole experience and not growing from it.
Yeah.
I do think good things will come of it as well. You know, lots of incentives, people, you know, getting different insights in how they connect with people and businesses, how they can be flexible. People think their jobs, you know, if they've been made redundant or put on furlough, maybe they're going to have a think, was this really what I wanted to do? You know, maybe other doors open. You know, you can't always look at things in a negative way, because then that's what's most likely to happen. You know, if you have that view.
Yeah.
I did a video yesterday, and it was just some thoughts that I was having over the weekend about telling somebody that's close to you, or, you know, around you, how you truly think and how you truly feel, you know, within a situation, or, you know, especially in this pandemic. You know, we're sat at home, we're not in our usual routines, we are, you know, downloading negative media, we're feeling some kind of stress. Our work life has changed, we might have been made redundant, as you said. You know, our businesses, we don't know where we're going. But when we're stressed, the brain doesn't work effectively. You know, we can't actually think logically, you know, because the blood isn't in that forefront part of the brain. So when you are feeling that swamped, when you are feeling negative, I think it's important to tell somebody exactly what you're thinking, because they can almost reframe the situation, because they're not you, and they can give you advice that you wouldn't see. If you follow what I mean, you wouldn't see that situation because you're in it. So I think it's massively important for people in this time to speak to family members, to friends, and not just surface, but to ask them for a little bit of advice. You know, say how you're feeling, and or even reach out to a therapist or, you know, professionals, and gain that little bit of understanding. And sometimes it's just a different opinion and viewpoint that can change how we're looking at it.
Yeah, and a lot of therapists at the moment, you know, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, are actually offering a lot of services for free now in this period of time. So, you know, if you're in that place, I would definitely make the most of that. And,
yeah, but, you know, if we move on, like, from, we said that, you know, the food affects our mental health, and our mental state, if we're in stress, then affects how we eat. What does the science say about the links of mental health and, you know, what the food actually does within our bodies? You know, those trigger reward systems, and, you know, sugar affecting the brain.
yes, so a lot of hormones are at play here, and a lot of neurotransmitters, and so it can become very, very complicated. But the good news is that nearly all of these, to optimize the situation, they all need the same approach. So that's quite handy. And basically, it's probably stuff that most people already know. But again, it's this understanding of, if I eat a lot of sugar, then okay, I get my dopamine and I get my happy feelings, but your blood sugar goes up as well, and then it crashes, and then you want more, and you know, there comes a point where it gets so bad that your body can't cope with that kind of sugar in your system, and then you're going to get insulin resistance, and then you're going to get diabetes. So all these things, you know, knowing them is, and finding other ways of getting, you can have these neurotransmitters created in your body. A lot of them are created in your gut, like serotonin, GABA, and a lot of them are produced in your brain, like dopamine. But there are lots of other ways that you can create these hormones. So that's really exciting. So I wouldn't necessarily sort of put a lot of focus on I should be eating greens and vegetables, which you should do, but let's not like put a lot of pressure on, I should get my fiber and I shouldn't eat this and I should. But focus on, okay, so if I laugh, watch comedy, or just have a laugh with friends, that creates the same hormones. Um, you listen to music that really, that you really like, or makes you feel good, it gives you exactly the same hormones. If you have sex, that will give you, oxytocin, which is, a very important hormone.
Closeness,
For feeling good and for having good relationships, and start experimenting with that and see how that works, and that might sort of take your focus a little bit away from this constant pressure of doing the right thing on the food side. I feel that if you get that working, if you can balance your stress by meditation, by therapies, then I think you're going to know the effects of that, and automatically then I think your food choices are going to be better, rather than do this, eat that, and there is a massive link between the gut and the brain. And if you eat foods that affect your gut health, then health is going to be affected. And so we have a whole nervous system in our gut as well as in your brain. And I don't know whether people have heard of the vagus nerve, but that plays a massive role in communication between the gut and the brain. And it works both ways. So the brain affects the gut and the gut affects the brain. And if you can find other ways than food and drugs and alcohol and anything else that is not great for you, good things to feel those sensations, then I think you're going to be more drawn to them, and then you're going to do sort of steer towards a healthier diet. But for all these sort of like with dopamine, if you take drugs and you do that on a regular basis, then you're actually going to mess the whole system up, and you're not even going to produce the dopamine anymore. So it's not even going to work anymore. So you want to do it in a sustainable way. And chronic stress like cortisol is a massively important hormone. So obviously we are designed to deal with stress, but the stress that we are designed to deal with is short, sharp stress, being chased by saber-toothed tigers and all that stuff. But having this chronic low level of stress that we have at the moment. So when you come into a stressy situation, normally you produce adrenaline first. And adrenaline actually suppresses your appetite a little bit because, at that time you need it. You need to be doing other stuff. But then short reaction, and then cortisol comes in, and cortisol increases appetite, and it promotes fat storage around the abdomen as well. So you don't want to have raised levels of cortisol the whole time. And again, what do you do to excuse me, to reduce that? It's all the things. So it's not like knowing what to do is rocket science. It is all these good things like meditation, visualization, counseling, music, dancing, laughter, eating fiber, vegetables, also healthy fats, avoiding inflammatory foods. So that is one thing I do have to mention, is inflammation. And often not very well understood. I think a lot of people think inflammation is, if you have a blister and it gets inflamed and it will get swollen and red, that is inflammation too. Chronic inflammation is just when your body's immune system is constantly revved up by either stress or diet, like a lot of people don't realize that vegetable oils, for example, are very inflammatory. But any sort of recipe you look at, even if it's like healthy recipes, they chuck a lot of vegetable oil. And even just small things like that, knowing that and avoiding that can help to lessen that inflammation. And that is just so important in your immune system as well. So what they found that people with high levels of inflammation have been much more vulnerable in this recent health crisis, and have coped not very well. And it's because it's inflamed and dealing with that, and it just doesn't have the ability to fight a virus as well. So sugar causes inflammation, and I think a lot of people don't know that. And if you understand that, you're more likely to think twice.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, isn't it, Roël? You're talking about sugar, I mean, and then going back to just earlier on in the podcast, you mentioned type 2 diabetes, and I'm sure, if I remember from years ago, my nutrition qualifications, it's all about onset. It was adult onset, wasn't it? But now children are getting it. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, because, well, this is also a little bit related to, false education, really, when from the 60s, 70s, this whole sort of fat scaremongering, where, we're told to don't eat saturated fat, and everything skimmed and eat 60% hard, healthy grains and potatoes, bread and pasta. But what happened is children, even if people think that the children's diet's not that bad, if your child has cereal, skimmed milk, and orange juice for breakfast, not many people would say, Jesus, that's unhealthy, or, can you give your child that? Oh, yeah, sounds great. Skim milk. But in fact, it just will jack the blood sugar up, nutrient-wise, very poor, because the full fat milk has all the nutrients in that children need. It supports our nervous system, cell, and your immune system. And so it's such a shame that, and again, I don't think it's people's fault. They just don't, understand what is happening. For lunch, they have sandwiches, a packet of crisps, a sugary drink, maybe squash or something, and then they come home and they have pasta, rice, and something. So if you add that all up, it's just an enormous amount of carbohydrates that our bodies just can't deal with.
It's incredible, really, if you think, as you're stating there, just to paraphrase yourself about the time we've got. It's lack of time, I think, in preparation for foods. And you mentioned the cereals. Well, I generally try and commit to 4 times a week with the porridge, but has a parent got time to make that porridge in the morning? I know it's only 5 minutes or so, but are they going to do that? And it's all about listening to what you're saying, which is really interesting, about the artificial highs and the natural highs. And we've been brought up, this mythology, again, as you said, a lack of knowledge, that because the corporations are pushing this fast food or fast pleasure, it's having a detrimental effect on us. Would you agree with the low moods that we are definitely in at the moment, possibly?
Absolutely.
Do you think that has a massive effect?
Yeah, and especially on children, because I think they are lacking healthy animal fats in their diets, and it affects the brain function, and it just has shown that people who are on a high carb, low fat diet suffer more from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So the science is there. It's just not that.
Does that high sugar content cause that inflammation, and then over time, can't the body repair itself?
Yes, yeah. So the high sugar content causes the inflammation. So what happens is the high sugar causes high insulin, and that then involves a response in the body, and then sort of once your immune system starts going and producing cells to like macrophages to combat the situation, and these macrophages, they're going to clump up together with some cholesterols in your blood, and then you're going to have arterial problems, And well, I mean, inflammation lies at the base of most diseases that we see now: cardiovascular, cancer, and also mental health issues.
Yeah,
definitely. And also, would you say all of this then can lead us into a spiral of the low moods? And it's also, what do you think of this inner critic we all have? You know, we all have this inner critic, this inner voice, a narrative of possibly negative. You know, we're beating ourselves up, aren't we? Because of either how we look, you know, that links to maybe body dysmorphia, how we look and how we feel about ourselves on a daily basis, because we haven't got the knowledge of what we should be eating.
No, exactly. And that just gets you nowhere, because with that kind of mindset, you're up against it. I find it highly unlikely that you'll be successful in adopting healthy habits if you have that kind of mindset. So you need to, in my mind, in that case, you need to address the mindset before you can address the diet.
And start coming at yourself with a little bit more compassion and be kinder to yourself.
And how you do, and you know better than me that there are lots of ways that you can work on that, and you may not be able to do that on your own. But
it's challenging, isn't
it? And people do recognize this is actually one that I think people know, that it's not that difficult to self-diagnose when you're in that frame of mind. So I think if you know that that's an issue with you, I would highly suggest that you sort that out first. And then, and don't try to do everything in one go. I mean, and what works for one person doesn't work for another. So, I could send somebody to a Reiki therapist and they might come back and go, well, that's not for me. Or they might change their lives. But you have to sort of be open-minded and be prepared to experiment a little bit and work out what works for you. Everybody's body is different, everybody's mind is different, and you have to accept that you're not going to find that sort of 100% guaranteed success approach in one go.
Yeah,
definitely.
And would you say that maybe in the Western world, because of Western science, we've almost given up accountability of our bodies? We've given it to somebody else, the doctor, the hospital, the NHS, even though the NHS is fantastic. You've got to become accountable, as you said, and decide yourself first what are the steps you're going to take, or seek help, because otherwise you won't move from that position of negativity to that future state of positivity to change your life. Would you agree?
It is a responsibility that you have, and if nothing else, it's putting a lot of pressure on our health system for people not taking that responsibility themselves, to look at themselves and then make changes. If you wait till you have diabetes, then you'll end up, using resources that could have been, frankly, it could have been avoided. And you not feel that you have a response. That's another thing that interests me about this pandemic. People, rightly so, have this, this massive love for the NHS now, and me too. I think they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But and especially when you see people, some people are really sort of anxious to post on social media now, like stay at home, and if they see anyone out that they think shouldn't be out, it's like, got to save the NHS. Well, did they before this pandemic ever stop to think, am I doing everything to relieve the pressure on the NHS? No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they have put other guidelines out now to sort of, I won't say change the rules about going out, but I think it's changed, Roël, a little bit of how people should proceed in this situation at the moment. But I agree totally that the NHS, from cradle to grave, I think that was the sentence years ago when it was invented in 1948. It's been fantastic, a fantastic servant for the United Kingdom and for people coming into this country who've used the NHS. But it is, more or less a service that is reliant on these doctors and nurses and the frontline staff helping us. But we've got to help ourselves, as you said, to actually help that organisation fully.
Yeah.
This can also a driver for behavioural change, because what's also shown in studies in behavioural science is that to be successful, what you're aiming for should align with your values. And so if you are that kind of person who very strongly feels now, you've got all the posters in the window of the NHS and you want to like really help them, then maybe you can harness that feeling and look at yourself and think, if I really want to help them, then maybe, I could do something about my lifestyle.
Yeah, of course.
And like you said there, the NHS has almost become a servant to people. And realistically, it should be used for, by those that are in desperate need, and then I agree with what you're saying, Roël. We need to look at ourselves before we start, blaming other people or say, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be outside, you shouldn't do that. The NHS wouldn't be under so much strain if people looked at themselves and said, I think I need to make some lifestyle choices here, some changes, in work.
You have so much power to, I think people don't realise how much power they have to optimise their health and well-being.
Yeah, and you're totally right there. I think you guys talking about the values and also of the power that we have. And unfortunately, I mean, in my situation with people using hypnotherapy, the subconscious to change, like you said, maybe childhood issues or the current situations, whatever that may be. Because again, stress will lower the immune system and you're more likely to become ill, etc., etc. And again, it is that knowledge, and maybe I'm just suggesting this knowledge should have been more freely available, to people, boys and girls, as they've grown up. This science that they learn, as they go through primary into senior school, maybe that should have been learned from the age of 1 or 2 years of age. So by the time that girl or that boy becomes 13, they've got a real understanding of how their body works, which then helps them to become totally healthier, have better relationships, and also then they feel more empowered, so it doesn't put the pressure on the doctors or the NHS, as you're saying. So I think we do need to change that information.
Yeah, agreed. That would sort out a lot of issues later on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, it's been a great discussion, but if you were going to leave any sort of tips, 2 or 3 tips, would there be anything that you'd say to the listeners, to take through with them on their journeys?
Yeah. Number 1, I'd say love yourself, have self-compassion. Every failure is one step closer to success, and the more you accept your failure, the more likely you are to be successful. So yeah, love yourself. That's important. Also, if you don't love yourself, you're unlikely to be successful with anything. Number 2, I would say practice informed self-care, and this is what we've just been talking about. You owe not only to yourself but to the rest of society to look after yourself, and there are lots of ways that you can do that. And if you don't know, get the help that you need to find out, because you have so much power to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say, don't be afraid to ask for help, for anything. Very likely that you need help, and just like I said, consider it. If you have a problem with anything broken in a house, you call an expert. So why would you not do that if you feel that something's not right in your mind or body? Ask for help is the bravest thing you can do.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you coming on, Roël, and I hope that you enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was my first ever podcast.
You wouldn't think so, Roël. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. And can you just broadcast, if our listeners want to find you, what's your website or any details you'd like to put over?
Yes, of course. So they can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Roël McMahon, but also my website is The Real Health Thing, and all my contact details are on there. And in this time, I am also very happy to have a free of charge chat with someone if they're feeling like they need some direction and guidance, and think that I can help them with that. So all the contact details are on there.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll leave it there and hope that you have a great day.
You too. Nice to see you guys.
Thank you.
Take care, Roël. Have a great one. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye.